Canada's history is Chinese Canadian history and vice versa. And so this is what the redress campaign was all about. I think it was in 1984 that Mr. Mack in Vancouver went to see Margaret Mitchell, and she raised the issue in Parliament. And so when I heard about that, I started talking to people in the Chinese community here in Montreal and say, well, you know, this is an issue that our community has to take up. So 85 or 86, I think we registered over 300 families who claim their parents or their father or their grandfather or themselves individually paid a head tax before coming into Canada. And so that's how I got involved, and I found through this whole process personally that both my father and my grandfather paid a $500 head tax. But when they were alive, they never spoke to me about it. We did various things to try and mobilize the community, to get the community involved. First, we did a public education campaign. We went to talk to the individual families that had registered to see what their histories were, collected copies of head tax certificates. And I remember, I think it was in 88 or 89, we organized a concert here in Chinatown at the Chinese Catholic Center. And that attracted about 300-400 people. That was to help raise funds with the ongoing campaign. We helped people organize for the national campaign. We were associated with the CCNC. I think at that time I was co-chair or the vice chair of the Head Tax Redress Committee of the CCNC at that time. Here in Quebec, in 1915, there was a laundry tax that was imposed on laundry owners, with the exception of washerwomen, the laundresses, who did the laundry as a commerce, so they were exempted from the law. Religious institutions that did laundry, so they were exempted from the law. Laundries that were incorporated, they were exempted from the law. So who was left? The 400 laundry owners who were Chinese hand laundry operators. So those were the only people that ended up paying this $50 a year laundry tax. In the 1970s, Chinatown was pretty much decaying. And so the federal government and the provincial government moved in to grab some of this land, which is high-priced land in downtown Montreal. The community mobilized, and in fact, there was a demonstration of over 200 people to protest against its bylaw. And so we won a small victory. We pushed the boundary of the rezoning from Saint Laurent Boulevard to the street just east of it. So we won an additional 200 feet. We engaged here in Montreal in this two-stage strategy, and ultimately that, I guess, convinced the Conservative government to at least recognize the survivors, the surviving head taxpayers and the surviving spouses who were all in their 90s and over 100, and this was back in the 2006 election campaign. The previous government, the Liberal government, refused to redress and refused to even apologize. So at least the apology was a victory in itself. And the promise of redress was very vague, and they settled on the lease liability on the part of the government in the sense of redressing only the survivors. Because our second stage was to also redress the families that were affected by the head tax and the Chinese Exclusion Act. So in total, so far, I think only about 785 people have been redressed. And that's pretty cheap for the government. Canadians need to know the history. There are past oppressions, and if we don't recognize past oppressions and correct those past oppressions, these oppressions will continue to today. And if they do continue, then the struggle will continue.